Doug Duncan, welcome back to Personal and Professional Best.
Thank you. Glad to join you.
Well, thanks for your time this morning. Doug, let's get started first with looking backwards. 2019, you and the team at Fannie Mae forecasted a 1% increase in annual sales in 2019. How did 2019 actually turn out?
Well, from a percentage basis, it was up 1.1%. So, I'll take that error rate. I'd like to be able to achieve that every year. In terms of the number of sales, the forecast we made in January was for 618,000. It actually turned out to be 681,000. So about 60,000 more new homes sold than what we had forecast. And then existing homes, we had forecast 5,375,000, and the actual was 5,340,000. So about 35,000 less than we had forecast. So on balance, up 1.1. So our total forecast was pretty close.
Yeah, I would say, Doug, listen, when we're talking about the numbers that we're talking about, that ought to enable you to keep your employment at least one more year. Most people that are in the audience today, when it gets down to forecasting, to come in 0.1% within the target, I'd say that's pretty darn good. So that's one of the reasons, of course, we welcome you back to Personal Professional Best. So many of the professionals that are sitting with us today are planning their own years, and it's important in context to understand what environment that they'll actually be working in. Of course, there's the things they control, their behavior in business, and there's the things that they don't control, which is the marketplace, which we're very grateful to have access to you. As we start 2020, we do so with what amounts to 50-year lows in unemployment rates and 50-year lows almost in interest rates, seemingly a great backdrop for housing sales. So what's you and the team at Fannie Mae's forecast for housing sales for 2020?
Yeah, it is a very, very beneficial, and we think, in spite of all the daily news, a pretty stable environment. So in terms of the percentage change in the number of home sales, we expect this year to be about 2.3% up. That is about 2.3% more homes sold. So new home sales, we think about 732,000, which is actually about 7.5% over new home sales in 2019. And then existing home sales, which are the bulk of sales, 5,426,000, which is up about 1.6% over 2019. So you combine that, it's about 2.3% up over last year. So it should be a good year.
Good. Sounds good. So essentially, when you think about last year, if the audience keeps in context, 1.1%, we're talking about doubling that this year. And even though it's only year over year up 2.3%, that's a pretty substantial change year over year when you think about a very stable industry like housing.
Yep.
So inventories, Doug, still at historic lows. What does this mean in terms of home prices for 2020?
Yeah, here's a little bit of history of 2019 to understand the dynamic. One of the things we said is when rates were rising in 2018 was this is going to create a slowdown because of the affordability challenge, because a lot of entry-level buyers are pretty sensitive to short-term significant interest rate changes. So there was a slowdown in 18 because the rates rose. Then rate came back down in 19, and it revealed again the fact that the movement in demand was stronger than the movement in supply, particularly on the existing home side. So what those entry-level buyers were doing was saying, well, with the decline in interest rates, if this is the payment I can afford, the interest component of that payment falls, so I can bid up the price and pay a little more principal, and that's what house prices up again, was that stronger movement in demand versus the growth of supply. So were we back to historic levels of existing homes available for sale, say go back 20 years or so, you'd see a lot stronger growth in home sales in terms of numbers of homes sold this year than you're going to see, because that entry-level buyer typically buys existing homes, not new homes, and the supply is at 30-year lows. So you should see some price appreciation again. The one thing we're watching from a risk perspective is that we don't see first-time buyers getting panicky and overcommitting, so that when we see the inevitable downturn, that they're at risk when the market turns.
So overall, when you think about it, unemployment and interest rates, cost of money, those two govern our industry, at least in terms of direction of the marketplace. The climate could not be better. And to further that, if we have a problem, it's inventory, but we have a tremendous inventory, is what I'm hearing you tell us, in terms of buying demand. So to the extent that that continues to put some pressure on housing going higher in terms of prices, overall, things seem to be in pretty good shape. So let's move to interest rates, because there are negative interest rates, of course, across the planet, and the president continues to tweet that he kind of likes those. Let's not even go to the negative interest rate conversation, but the Federal Reserve has certainly been in the news more than it would prefer, in large part because the president has taken on a different relationship in terms of his communication with the Fed. Are you all forecasting in Fannie Mae that the Fed lowers rates in 2020? What's your best thinking about the Fed and interest rates this year?
We have the Fed doing nothing in terms of changing rates, neither increasing nor decreasing rates. We take them at their word that unless something unusual happens, monetary policy is on hold, and that's pretty reasonable. Frankly, this is an election year. Typically, neither party likes to ruffle the water during that time period. So we see about 2.2% growth, which is non-inflationary. We don't think the Fed will get to its inflation target of 2%. So that will keep them on hold. The coronavirus thing could, if it continued to expand globally, that could alter things, and the Fed commented on that in their testimony before the House and the Senate, saying that is something that they're watching. And you can see it in some other things like shipping data. We watch shipping data, and that is down very significantly. That's a supply chain issue. So if that continues to expand, it could be a problem. But right now, we don't see the Fed making any changes out into 2021.
So it's basically a very stable economy at this point. Jobs are continuing to get generated. All things look good. You just brought up the coronavirus in asking about the Fed and your view that you expect them to stay neutral, which is kind of where you would imagine they would be, because we kind of have that Goldilocks situation where we're getting growth, there's not inflation, things are kind of on all green, if you will, for go. So you brought up coronavirus. What's the definition of a black swan? Because that has kind of been attached to the coronavirus. Could that be a black swan in terms of the economic happenings?
So I was looking up in the Oxford English Dictionary, which is my go-to for definitions. And given that today is Valentine's Day, there was a humorous item in there. It says, here's an example of black swan in context from the Ladies' Dictionary in 1694. Husbands without fault, if such black swans there be. I thought that was pretty good.
I thought that was good too.
Wikipedia, however, suggests an event that comes as a surprise has a major effect and is often inappropriately rationalized with the benefit of hindsight. So could the coronavirus be a black swan? It could, although there has been discussion from the Center for Disease Control over the last couple of decades about the rising potential for some sort of a global problem, because the resistance has been developed to penicillins and some other of our traditional treatments. So it's not completely unexpected or out of the blue, but it is definitely something that we're watching that could change things if it does not come under control.
So when our viewers hear the term Black Swan, it's really just an event that you cannot foretell, that just shows up, that could have disruption in terms of what's happening in the economy, that cannot be forecasted. I'll remind you to remind the board at Fannie Mae that there are black swans that don't get contemplated when you go into your forecasting models.
Right.
I'm still amazed
Yeah,
at
that's right.
Yeah, I'm still amazed at your accuracy for last year. So, Doug, just overall, then, you feel very good about this year's housing market, and we so appreciate you making yourselves available to folks that are a part of Personal Professional Best, many hundreds of realtors, and of course, our organization. We depend on your data as we think about those things that are outside of our control, i.e. the marketplace, as we build thoughtfully investments in our own businesses. So thank you so much. And finally, Doug, I just wanted to tell you not only how much we appreciate you being a friend of our Personal Professional Best program, but I wanted to remind you that we all continue to pray for you, and especially for Brandy, your beautiful wife, and for a full and complete healing for Brandy Duncan. So just know that you've got a lot of friends here in Atlanta and through the Southeast that are grateful for you and are praying for you.
Well, thank you so much. It's absolutely an encouragement and a significant impact on our circumstances as we move forward. We really cherish the fact that you're with us.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Next time we get you back, we'll look for an update on your own personal and professional best goals and progress for the year. All righty?
Sounds great.
Talk to you soon. Thanks, Doug.
You bet. Okay.